There she blows. Yep.
Bang.
If people only knew, John, about all the technical difficulties going into this. But between you and Jared, we got her fixed. Looking pretty good.
Yep, and I got my chair here, Pete.
Oh, that's something. I don't know what it is, but it's something. Okay, well, how about this, Waldo? Where are you today? Are you in Puerto Rico or Buenos Aires or Brazil or
Michigan?
Oh,
and tomorrow I'll be out at O'Hare for the show.
Oh, Jesus Christ!
I know. That means guys will be wandering by, going, Aren't you Pete Najarian? No, folks. Truly, he is Pete Najarian. That guy in the white shirt is Pete Najarian. Yep. Notice he doesn't have a mustache on top. He just has the chin.
Which is ridiculous, and I don't know at what time, but someday that's going to change. I've you know, I don't know.
I think you and Scott Steiner and Hulk Hogan.
Oh, I'll give you a quickie. So yesterday, it's July 4th, right? I'm enjoying myself. I'm walking down the beach with my son. We're having a good time. He's got his dog with him. We're hanging out, you know, talking about things. Walk by a big, beautiful group of people, several attractive gals and guys, and they're, you know, getting ready to barbecue. All of a sudden, the lady starts screaming, "It's Hulk Hogan! It's Hulk Hogan!" And I looked at her and I go, "Where? Oh, God, I tell you, if they only knew how big Hulk Hogan truly is, they would not think that was Hulk Hogan. But
yeah, I mean, he's all of 6'5", Pete. Even now, he's probably 6'3" or 4". Even now, after the spine compressions that he's done and everything else.
And he's got to go well over 300 pounds, which I'm not even sniffing 300 pounds. So.
Thank God.
But anyway.
Folks, you're tuned into the Rebel Edge. Jared is handling all of the technical stuff, dancing bears, everything but the sort of furniture I have to use to broadcast from here in Michigan. But let's get started, Pete, with the macro minute. We're going to get the Fed speak. That doesn't mean a Fed meeting. That's 3 weeks away. But we're going to get Fed speak, so that's my macro minute. Full stop, end of story.
Boy, it took up a lot of time. I'm going to give you one that's almost as short. So, China, right? We talk about China all the time and all the effects that it has, and a lot of the guys who sit on those desks over there in New Jersey are calling it China. I don't know where they get the R from, John. I have no idea, but they do, and they call it China. No. That all being said, disappointment is what I would frame this as, why we were under a little bit of pressure. We were early. We're returning back to that. The services activity, definitely not at the level that people expected it to be now. And because of that, that is the macro side of why we're seeing a little bit of those palms out and people selling the Dow in certain areas in the market. And that's why we're seeing the pressure.
Yeah, I agree with that, Pete. ISM sorts of things, you know, how much factory utilization and so forth, those do go into some of the softer outlook right now. Mm-hmm. Let's talk about something that's not soft, though. Fantastic futures!
Fantastic futures!
Pete, I was just on with our friends over at the CME, and we're, you know, having conversations with those guys, and they said, you know, it'd be great if you guys could cover futures and futures options. And I said, you do know that the second thing we cover every day is fantastic futures.
And we call out Terry.
I guess we're going to have to call out Anita from now on. Hey, Anita, we're going to talk about futures, I promise. And futures options. There will be more of that. But, you know, we're trying to cast a wide net, folks. Get as many people in as we can to enjoy our outlook on, you know, would I buy this? Would I sell that? And so forth. We're not giving financial advice. We're telling you what we're doing. And in this case, we're doing what Pete talks about a lot, which is energy. And the fantastic futures today are the crude prices surging. That's not just gasoline and crude oil, but it's also other distillates like diesel that are impacted by that, heating oil. Anyway, across the board, they're up about 3% today, Pete.
All right, that's a great one. I know we're a little bit short because we're trying to keep on time, but I will add this to it too, John. How about the treasuries? Now, we talk about the 10-year, the 2-year, the this, the that, all those different things. I like to focus on the 10-year. And when I'm looking at the 10-year, John, back in April, it was 326. In May, it was 340. In June, it was 3.6. You know where it is today? 3.92. I'm telling you this, when that 10-year starts getting, and it's getting there, gets close to 4, people start to go, well, maybe I'm in a treasury mode. and they start pulling it out of the markets themselves. It's that risk on, risk off, and all the rest of that. So just be careful and understand that we are getting awfully close to 4% on the 10-year right now.
Yep. It took us 10 interest rate hikes, folks. Now we're in a pause period. And I noted this morning, Pete, that the UK, that's the United Kingdom, of course, they are actually out there saying that their auction today for their gilts, that's what they call their bonds, gilts are going to be 5.668%. That is the highest they've offered this century for those gilts. So that's because people expect them to keep hiking. And if they're going to keep hiking, they have to offer higher rates, because otherwise people will say, no, I'll just wait till next month.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Let's talk about Wolf, because Wolfspeed, it was up as much as 18% early today, Pete. They struck a carbide wafer agreement with Renesas. I'm not sure that I'm pronouncing that right, but I know when I see a deal for $2 billion like this, it's driving the shares of WOLF higher. And JP Morgan had just recommended it on Monday this week, the 3rd. Good timing.
This is really an interesting company, John. By the way, it's a name change as well, because this used to be Cree for the people who go back a few years and wonder, well, where did Wolfspeed come from and who are they? These guys are efficient. They provide everything that you're looking for in the EV, particularly space, which everybody is talking about. We'll be talking about a little bit more as we get into this. But very interesting, John, a 10-year deal and all the rest of the things that go along with this. People very excited about what's going on here. It is well off of 52-week highs as well. So this isn't something where, gosh, do I feel like I'm missing this? I don't know that you have to feel that way at all. As a matter of fact, I'm looking at it at these levels thinking this is going to be one of these names that I think you've got to definitely take a look at if you are bullish in the EV world, because of the fact of what they do and how they do it, because it's efficient and it gives people a longer lifespan, this, that, and the other, as far as batteries, all that type of thing. This is a really, really incredible thing that's going on right now.
Yeah. And I think what Pete described there, folks, is why I would be accumulating that one on any dips, really, because I see a long runway for them because of this, Pete. Yeah. Let's talk about XPEV. And the reason is, well, Tesla, you got to have them both, I think, Pete, in the same sentence, certainly. Yeah. If not with a slash in between them, like I've done it. XPEV was up 7% early. They said they expect significant delivery growth in H2, the second half of the year, with the launch of their G6 model. Okay, that's all great and happy stuff, right? Take a guess how many of these EVs, Pete, they plan on delivering on a monthly basis.
Well, it's got to be at least 100,000 or something, right? Or 200,000.
You'd think so. I mean, Elon just gave us 266,000 deliveries, not just manufactured, but deliveries. Nope, 15,000. So, and they say in the fourth quarter it might be as much as 20,000. Now, last time I checked, Elon's doing, a lot more than that. So that's why I'm saying that you got to kind of weigh both of these. It doesn't mean you don't own XPEV, right, but it means you have to be aware of these facts.
Well, and this is we're building off the same thing we were just talking about with Wolf too, about EVs, and that is really, you talk about AI or EV, that is the places that people are looking right now. That's where the gains are getting, where people are finding those gains. Because just last week, John, we talked about Rivian and Tesla, and we talked about some of those numbers and some of those delivery numbers being a little bit better than expected. So yeah, Xpeng has not got the greatest numbers in the world. There's no doubt about that. It'll take some time. Eventually, I think that they will not necessarily catch up, but they'll start having much bigger numbers than they have right now. They were up 27% quarter over quarter on that last time that they brought up their deliveries, but it is a smaller number, to your point. I mean, this is not even comparable to what Tesla's doing. And that's another thing that I don't think the rest of the world has understood. Yes, there's a gazillion EV makers over in China. There are others outside of the US as well, but Tesla is the king, and they've got the numbers, they've got the data, they've got a lot of different aspects of things that really put them in a great spot right now. So for anybody who's ready to say, well, Tesla's under attack, this ain't an attack just yet, John. And I think they got plenty of run room themselves in the next couple of months, couple of years, probably.
Yeah, I think Tesla sort of sets the standard,
Yep.
and everybody else is just kind of following along. This is one area, though, Pete, that Steve Weiss, for as many things as I would think our friend Steve Weiss is wrong about, one thing he's somewhat right about, not right about the stock price, and
Never.
that's Volkswagen, but he is right about their production of EVs, but they don't make any money. I mean, Tesla has been printing cash for a long time. Now, a lot of that's government supported. We understand. But Volkswagen produces a lot of those cars, and they're producing a lot and not making much.
Right.
So anyway, let's talk about Opera, Pete, because you and I spoke about this Norway-based company that does all these different things. Well, it turns out, that their AI chatbot, which is called Aria, just continues to get rave reviews. That's why it's up here on us on Rebel's Edge several days out of the last week. If you look at it last Friday, it was a $19 stock. Now it's 23 and a half. 5 days ago, it was $6 lower than where it is now. So if you miss us talking about a stock like this, like OPRA, that isn't NVIDIA, but it's got a lot more upside oomph to it because it's much smaller and somewhat nimble and much more diverse. That's why you watch the show, folks.
Yeah, you're 100% right on that, John. I mean, when you look at the numbers, yes, NVIDIA looks unbelievable, and they are. I'm not going to take it one thing away from NVIDIA, what they've done, how they position themselves, and how they've been performing. They've done a magnificent job. How could we ever rip a company that's up 174% year to date? I mean, you can't, except you could say, but Opera's up 207%. Now that's a big number. And they hit another 52-week high today, traded over 24, John. So this is a name that's out there in the AI space, and there will be more, but this one already is profitable. Now that's something you don't hear very often when you're talking about sort of the new area you were just talking about with EVs, who's making money and who's not. Well, how about AI? There's a lot of folks out there that suddenly AI is part of who we are. And it could be in any line of work. But are they making any money at it? These guys are. These guys are already profitable. There's a lot of interesting things going on out there. And they are beating the biggest of the big, John. I mean, they're going up against Google Chrome. They're going up against Microsoft. They're going up against everybody, and they're winning. And they're doing an absolutely amazing job with how they've been able to put themselves into the position they are right now from an AI perspective. So I don't know that this thing's done. As a matter of fact, based upon, like you were just talking about, based upon just the market cap and what they're doing and how they're competing, I would say this is a company that still has room. I'm not saying you chase it, but I think you certainly better start thinking about how you might want to approach this particular name, because I think there's plenty of room. If you believe in AI, this thing's got a lot more runway in front of it.
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt. And I'm going to need to freshen up my knowledge of how you do takeovers, Pete, of European stocks like a Norway-based company like this, because with the way they're going and how little it would be, you got to think that somebody bids, a lot more than where the stock's trading, those 24 bucks or so for this company. All right, let's talk about Meta. Meta is a stock people love to hate. They hate it because they think it steals their privacy and so forth. They also don't probably have a great opinion of the leader of the company, Mr. Zuckerberg. I think both Elon Musk and Zuckerberg have their fair share of haters, Pete. But one thing Meta's doing right is they're going after Twitter when Twitter's, sort of on its side right now, because Twitter had some issues and we want to address those. But also, Zuckerberg's going to be launching Threads, he calls it. That's his Twitter killer. We'll see if enough people want to switch over to that, or if it's just an echo chamber of, just like if you get a far right or far left, nobody wants to be in one that's just one-sided. I don't know what Threads will be, but this is why the stock is up almost 4% today, Pete.
Yeah, Zuck has a hatred for Elon, and I think the feeling is mutual, to quote young Frankenstein. I mean, it's unbelievable how much these guys dislike each other, John, to the point where I think this has been building for a while, and suddenly now he's releasing it starting tomorrow. Threads comes out, and then it goes into the rest of the world the next day, except for the UK where they can't get in. So there's a lot going on here when you're talking about what they're doing, Meta, and what Zuckerberg himself is absolutely saying, hey, look, we got the Twitter clone. We're going to go right at you, and we're going to try to beat you if we can. And I'll tell you what, John, it could be a pretty interesting battle. I don't know that there's going to be a winner or a loser necessarily, because I just think that right now there still is room for some competition out there. Because let's be honest, I mean, when it really comes down to it, you've got Twitter, not a lot of real names that really compare to Twitter right now, and you've got potentially Threads. And if they can get that, this could be a pretty interesting thing. And I think a lot of people will have both, just like they do with everything else, So I think it could be a pretty interesting deal. It really could be just another revenue stream that comes into Meta. And he's got many. He learned from Apple. He's done a magnificent job in what he's done through the acquisition side of things, mostly, not creativity within. But again, what are they doing? Well, they're not doing their own thing. They're basically doing their version of Twitter. And that's what Threads is. So it should be a pretty interesting battle. And I can't wait for these guys to get in the ring. I don't know when that date's going to be, but it will happen, John.
Well, that's according to Mr. White over there at the UFC. I would love to see it, Pete. And that is something I'd pay for sure. I've not done a pay-per-view in my adult life, but I would do that pay-per-view. All right, let's talk a little sports. Pete, I know that you're thinking a little bit about NFL supremacy here. Tell us what you're thinking.
Well, John, this goes back to something, and I harp on this all the time. I think it's really important. I think other people should be talking about this more and more and more. And what I mean by that is the NFL Shield. Why does the NFL rule? Why are they the king? Why is there nobody even close when it comes to competition, John? We all know that basketball is a world sport, right? Except here in the U.S., where it is a second world sport, a long ways from being the NFL. And here's part of the problem. And I know I've pointed a finger at him many times, and I'll continue to do so until he either wakes up or gets fired. But Adam Silver doesn't understand how to keep the shield of the NBA nice and bright the way the NFL does. Because when you look at how the NFL came down on those players that were gambling, and let's be honest, when it's all said and done, John, they weren't necessarily gambling. At least they haven't proven that they were gambling in any way that would affect the play that they had. They're only saying they shouldn't have been gambling at the time that they were. They were inside of buildings they were not supposed to be in, which is, obviously anywhere that within the NFL, Vikings have their own village and everybody's got this stuff. But they took these players and said, you know what, guys, you're out for a year, you're out for a year, you're out for a year, and went down the line. And by the way, there was a guy that everybody forgets about already, but Ridley last year was playing his wide receiver. He got thrown out for a full year as well. So what is he going to do? He's never going to do that again. I guarantee you that. None of these guys who want to give up these multi-million-dollar contracts back to the team or whatever, it actually goes into a donational thing. But nonetheless, they want their money, right? I mean, that's the ticket out for any of us. But the problem is the NBA, I mean, you know, when you look at what they did and the fines that they've put out there, and how about fining some of the teams themselves, John? I mean, is there ever going to be a time where he says, look, by the way, San Antonio, everybody loves Pop. I don't. I think he's a scumbag. And here's why. He tanked to get the first pick in the draft. Let's be honest. He pulled everybody, tanked the schedule, and gets the first pick. Is that okay, really? I mean, is that something that we all think is just an okay thing, and the load management and the fact that you get a guy who's throwing around his gun and everything, you go, well, you know what? You're going to get 25 games. Don't ever do that again. And the guy's like, well, I didn't get the full year, not like these NFL guys. So, all right, I guess it's not the biggest deal in the world. Who knows? I'm not saying he's going to do it again, John, but the NBA just can't figure it out. And meanwhile, I think Goodell has at least said, hey, look, there's a line in the sand and do not cross it because you will get penalized.
Yep. There's no doubt that the NFL takes a much higher opinion of how they handle things. Now, we could point to things, though, Pete, like kneeling and during the national anthem and things like that. Now, that was accepted then. I don't know if it would be accepted again. The reason I say that is the pushback against Target and Budweiser and now Ben and Jerry's ice cream comes because people don't like this stuff shoved down their throat. Baseball did it in terms of, you know, Pride Month and so forth, and teams wore rainbow colored uniforms or whatever. Every team but one, the Texas Rangers. They just said, nope, we're not going to do that. We know our fans don't like that. They don't like to be preached to. We have nothing against transsexuals or gays, but we don't want that to be part of our team. We want people to come and watch and be entertained by the baseball that we play, not by our political opinions. So we'll have to see if the NBA finally shapes up. If they don't, Pete, then Adam Silver could be out of a job. And there's lots of people that would like that job. So, you know, let's see if maybe he doesn't start following a little more of the NFL's script.
Yeah, I would think so, John, just because, you know, when you're that far away, second fiddle, you want to get everything you can, and you've got to do the right things. You got to make the right decisions. You got to have the players and the coaches and everybody, all the teams doing the right thing by the rules that you've got. You need to have those kind of rules in place. Now, back to a more fun thing. How about the All-Star game? It's less than a week away. It's next Tuesday. We've got the home run derby, John. We've got the All-Star game. We've got all this stuff. It's something that always, you know, it's right around this time of year. I think it's pretty exciting. A lot of people are very excited about it. You got a guy like J-Rod out there, Vladimir. You got Mookie Betts. You got Pete Alonso. He's a guy that you've brought up many times because he's been one of the leaders all year long with the home run stuff. Ohtani might still play if he's healthy enough. Depends on, you know, obviously you don't want to play in the All-Star game if you're not pretty much all the way back to healthy. And he's had some issues. But how about this, John? I wanted to run this one by you. So we're at the All-Star break. So what does that really mean? Well, essentially it means we're about halfway through. So right now, Tampa and Baltimore are the leaders in the AL East, and they are the number 28 and number 29 team when it comes to payroll, right? So who are they in front of? Well, the Yankees are number 2. They got $279 million. You've got Toronto at $212 million. They're number 7 in the league. So it's showing something that you and I have already talked about before, but it's now halfway into the season. Now this isn't just like, hey, early part of the year, those guys are going to catch up. I mean, it's unbelievable to see how these guys are doing it, and yet they don't have the same kind of payrolls. It's not even in the same ballpark of payrolls as these guys. So The one other thing that I find really interesting is the AL East right now. The worst team is Boston, and they're 500. They're 43 and 43. So it gives you a little bit of an idea that not only are they doing it, John, Baltimore and Tampa, not only are they doing this at a high level, but they're in the best division in all of baseball right now, and they are still sitting at the top, number one and number two. So I don't know. What do you think? I mean, do you think there's any chance that some of these teams maybe start to say, hey, look, do we really have to pay the money to get that guy and that guy and that guy? Or are we going to try to do something a little bit closer to what we are seeing happening with some of these other teams? What do you think?
Well, I think the same sort of thing, Pete, that happened when the Cubs nabbed the general manager from Boston and the Cubs went on and won a World Series. And it wasn't the Moneyball sort of thing that more or less you're talking about, but nonetheless, you got a general manager who's a better judge of talent. You got to go with that. I think the issue here is that many of these teams just buy the names to put butts in the seats, and that's more important than winning in many cases. Now, they expect to win, of course, but just because you're spending $270 million, like you said, with the Yankees, doesn't mean that you're going to have the best team. It means you're going to have the most recognized team. That's a fact. Yeah. But I'll tell you what, Pete, Baltimore, I saw them playing the Twins. They might have the ugliest, and I know people do this. You know, they come up with multiple uniforms during the year so they can sell more through Fanatics or, through, lids or any, whether it's hats or uniforms and all the rest. But, oh my God, it was all black and it just said Baltimore across the front, just in block letters, not in a nice script like the Yankees or something like that or whatever. It's just, I'm looking at it thinking that is the ugliest uniform until I saw the Seattle Mariners uniform. It was blue with yellow, and then they had this funky hat with a trident upside down on it. That it was the dumbest. You wouldn't think that was a junior college team out there wearing those uniforms. That's how ugly they were. And do you remember when San Diego State football, Pete, the Aztecs would wear all black? Black socks, black pants, black jerseys and everything, black helmets, or maybe black and red helmets, but it was the ugliest uniform known to man. That's what many of these teams are doing, and I didn't even want to watch it. So we'll see whether or not they wear any of those ugly ass uniforms.
That all got kicked off by Nike, man, in Oregon, and all the different uniforms that those guys would wear. And some of them were so killer. They really were. They were awesome. But there's a few out there where you go, I'm not sure if I don't know what they were looking at when they thought of that one. But everybody's doing it now. And for all the right reasons, like you said, John. I mean, whether or not they're going to get different sales. And you and I might hate it, but somebody else might go, hey, man, that thing's pretty badass. I like that or whatever. So, it is an interesting thing, but everybody's doing it, and it's been part of the sports. There is something about the traditional side of things, though. I mean, when you see Penn State play football, you know exactly what they're going to be wearing. They don't change it. There are certain schools where they're like, this is who we are, and they stick with it. I think Alabama's been in that category too. I don't know that I've seen any crazy uniforms out of Alabama or some of these other schools, but everybody's looking for another revenue driver. And I think if they keep going from this uniform to that uniform, and some of them are pretty cool, but some of them aren't. And every once in a while they lay an egg.
Yeah, well, I think Baltimore laid an egg. Let's check that out for tomorrow's show and see what the percentage of souvenirs purchased with that black jersey with the white Baltimore across it. Folks, make sure you do tune in tomorrow, 1 p.m. Eastern Time. We'll be back with the Rebel's Edge. We appreciate all of you. Make sure you tell a friend, and we'll see you at 1 o'clock tomorrow.